Welcome to the Sports Animal SportsFest. Little treat for you as we go and talk to the our own John Wilkerson, who is in Canton for the Pro Football Hall of Fame induction ceremonies, which of course includes VFL and legend Peyton Manning. John, how are you?
Oh, doing great, Vince. Hate that I'm missing Sports Fest, but it's pretty exciting to be here.
It is a great crowd, and I know everyone's excited to hear what you have to say about Canton. And also joining us here on video from Houston covering Texans camp, but he is a Hall of Fame voter and certainly has a lot of insight and background through the years as a terrific writer, NFL writer for the Houston Chronicle. He joins John and Jimmy on Sports Talk each week, the great John McClain. John, great to see your face finally. How are you?
I'm doing great, Vince. And John, how are you?
Oh, great to see you, John. I wish you were here because the first time I met you in person was when John Elway was inducted back in '04.
I remember that. And as someone who's been to Canton probably 40 or 50 times, I used to come to induction weekend because it's the best day of the year. But now I've got to cover the Texans every day. And as someone who was put into the Hall of Fame in '06, there's nothing more special than that kind of honor, but also being there for the induction weekend and seeing what it means to people. Some of the most toughest, meanest, nastiest players and coaches turn to mush when they're voted into the Hall of Fame. And then when they actually get inducted, they spend most of their weekend in tears.
Yeah, amazing.
One cool addition is that wasn't a part of the landscape back in '04 is the gold jacket ceremony. And I didn't realize there's the gold jacket gauntlet. That was one of the really cool things to see last night, John, where all of the inductees, one at a time, it's almost like a fumble drill. They go through those that have their gold jackets, all the Hall of Famers that are on hand, and it's their way of being embraced and welcomed to the select fraternity, isn't it?
It started about 5 or 6 years ago, that tradition, as they moved the stage around. It's been in various incantations in the Canton Civic Center, and they put 7,000 people in there. And I told the NFL people for years, televise it live. And well, it'd be too long, or we'll put snippets on the NFL Network. I said, no, there's no such thing as too long. You know, people have waited this. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I don't care if the speeches are too long, presentations are too long. They've done everything they can to cut them back. But that ceremony, when they get the gold jackets, is the best of the weekend. And I remember Bruce Matthews and Mike Munchak, both were voted to the Hall of Fame for their play with the Oilers, and Bruce with the Titans as well. And they gave each other their gold jackets, and watching people put on that gold jacket for the first time is extra special. I've seen a couple of them do it, and they had kind of started losing it mentally, and they didn't know what planet they were on, but the strobe lights are flashing, the music's blaring, the crowds are cheering, their family and friends and fans are shooting video, and it's just such a monumental event. I wish everybody in the country could go there in Lambeau Field at least one time, because there's nothing better than the NFL than Canton and Green Bay.
And John Wilkerson, as you know, Peyton Manning wore the orange and white, looked good in that. He looked good in that gold as well, didn't he?
100%. And they joked, they said he was the only Hall of Famer that put in his own pocket square.
No doubt. All right, we're here at Sports Animal SportsFest, joined by John Wilkerson, co-host of Sports Talk, coming to us from Canton at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Inductees tonight and tomorrow as well. And John McClain, longtime NFL writer and Hall of Fame voter for the Houston Chronicle. So, John McClain, let's start in right there when we're talking about Peyton Manning. I know you have so many stories, but why don't you share with our listeners some of those Peyton Manning stories that really stand out to you that I know they'll enjoy?
One time when Archie Manning was doing the color for the radio network of the Saints, they came to San Antonio where the Oilers were having training camp, and they were going to play a preseason game. And Archie, who had played briefly with the Oilers back in the early 80s, and I covered him and knew him, he came to practice and hung out with people. And so I asked if he wanted to ride back to his hotel, and he said, sure. So I asked him, I said, so how's Olivia and how are the boys? And he said, well, last year, Cooper, not Cooper, but Cooper, as he called him, had caught like 85 passes for 1,500 yards and 25 touchdowns as a junior at Newman High School. And I said, wow. I said, he must going to be recruited all over the country. He said, well, he said, I may be wrong, but I think it's my middle son that's going to be getting the most recruiting because he's the one that threw all those passes and he's got another 2 years of high school. And I said, Peyton? He said, yeah, Peyton. He said, I think Peyton's got a chance to be special. Don't quote me on that, but I'm just telling you. So I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, he said, going back to when Peyton was a little kid, you know, Cooper wanted to play around, play with the kids in the neighborhood, go to the show, you know, have girlfriends. All Peyton wanted to do was watch tape. And back then, he'd crawl up in my lap when I was watching film and he'd say, Daddy, let me watch film with you. And so he would. And he'd ask me questions. That's when he's like 4 and 5 years old. And he was watching film. And sometime, Daddy, let's watch film. Son, I don't want to watch film. I watched it for 3 hours at the facility today. I'm all, come on, Daddy, please, please, please. Okay. So he'd been doing that. And then as Peyton got older, he'd do the same thing. Hey, Dad, watch film with me. Peyton, go get a girlfriend. You know, go to the mall, go to the movies, get a girlfriend. I don't want a girlfriend, Daddy. I want to watch film. So Peyton started watching film at such an early age, and that's one reason he was such a smart, shrewd, quick thinking on his feet quarterback, because there wasn't anything that he hadn't seen. And so another thing that I love to tell this story in Houston to all the University of Texas fans, I said, well, where's Cooper going to go to school? He said, well, I think he might go to University of Texas. I said, really? He said, yeah, his girlfriend's going there. And he told me, I'm going to put together a tape of Cooper and Peyton, and I'm going to send it to David McWilliams, the coach. And I'm going to say, keep an eye on my sons going into this season, because I think the oldest one wants to come to Texas. And if he does, the youngest one worships him. And I'm pretty sure Peyton would follow Cooper wherever he went. And I'm going to put together this highlight reel, and I'm going to send it to David McWilliams. So I saw Archie another time, and I said, what happened? He said, McWilliams was all in. And I said, oh, that's just what we Baylor fans need, is for Texas to finally get a great quarterback, their best since Bobby Lane. And then I see him months later, and I said, so what happened? They broke up. Cooper went to Ole Miss. Peyton's being recruited by everybody. And so he said before that, David McWilliams had been fired, and he had asked John McAfee to take a look at that tape, and he did. McAfee goes, we don't do things like that. And I said, as a Baylor fan, because I didn't want Peyton Manning in Austin, and I love telling that story throughout the decades to UT fans. And I said, you could have had Peyton Manning, but John McAfee kept you from it. And the truth is, he wouldn't have gone since Cooper didn't go there. But I still like to stick it to the Longhorns. One more story Archie told me, and we're talking about Peyton. This was when Peyton was a rookie, and he was first overall pick. As you know, Ryan Leaf was number 2, and they were playing a preseason game in New Orleans. And this was 98. I was covering the NFL then because Houston didn't have the Texans yet. And so I went over to New Orleans, and I did a big story on Archie and Olivia and another one on Peyton. And then I did one, they put a headline on it, said, Eli's coming. And I said, can I interview Eli? He goes, yeah, go up, be on the steps outside the entrance to the school at say 3:30. I said, well, you going to be there? He said, why? I said, don't you want to be there? Well, I'm interviewing Eli, who was going into his senior year. He said, no, he can handle it. And so I interviewed Eli going into his senior year, and he was just as poised then as Peyton had been. So before that game, Archie was talking about the competitiveness of Peyton. And he said he's not using he didn't use the word I'm about to use. He said, my son is so competitive, he cuts your footballs off to win. And you can't put that in the Chronicle, what he said. I said, well, Chronicle wouldn't run it anyway. And he told me a story when Peyton was at UT. and Brandon Stewart was the quarterback. Brandon Stewart from Stephenville, Texas, that there was some room that they would watch film in. And you could only get one or two in at a time. And Peyton would go in, and there was an allotted time, and for the quarterbacks, and he would take it all up. And he'd hear Brandon Stewart banging on the door. So when Peyton was through, he would put headphones on, open the door. Oh, dude, I didn't hear you out here. And Brandon Stewart wouldn't have any time to look at tape. So maybe that's why Brandon Stewart didn't turn out to be any good. But like you guys know, everybody loves the Manning family. I've known them since the early 80s. It's great to see Peyton and Eli, and now Cooper's son, Arch Manning, who's going to be the highest recruited player in the country. That family, you know, their football family number one, along with the Bruce and Clay Matthews family. And it's been an honor to know them and to cover Archie. I think, let's see, it was 2.5 years near the end of his career till he was traded to Minnesota in October of '83. But like everybody around the country, we have so much admiration. And Peyton, if there's any question, what Peyton wants to do, being on ESPN Plus is not his lifelong dream. He wants to run a front office like John Elway. He told me that. He wants to run a front office at some point. I think he'll do it. And like everything else Peyton's done, he'd be great. I personally would like to see him have his own sitcom.
No doubt. That's why we have John McClain on. That's why he's on Sports Talk each week. Those tremendous stories. John McClain from the Houston Chronicle, John Wilkerson from Canton at the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm Vince Ferrara here at Sports Animal SportsFest. We're talking Peyton going into the Hall of Fame this weekend. So, John, real quick on Tennessee. How many mentions do you expect Peyton in his induction speech will mention the University of Tennessee? I've seen like 3.5 as a over-under mentioned. What do you think in terms of times that he will talk about Tennessee?
I think I would take the over. He's obviously going to mention his hometown in Newman, Isidore Newman High School, where he was first noticed by people, and then Tennessee, and of course the Colts, and of course the Broncos, where he won a Super Bowl in each city. And it's one player I would like to see be able to go on and on as long as he wanted would be Peyton, because he's such a great talker. He's so insightful, informative, and funny with a great sense of humor. He could talk for 2 hours and it'd be fine with me.
And John Wilkerson, the same question for you. How many times will you mention do you think he will mention the University of Tennessee?
Yeah, I'd take the over, just like Mr. McClain would. I do think it's going to be something to see. They're asking for 6 minutes-ish, and then they're going to play music at 8, so they say. But I also enjoyed what Peyton said, and that was, yeah, let me see them do that when Alan Faneca, the offensive lineman for the Steelers, is talking. Let's see them give him the rush off the stage. But I do think that he's going to be gracious, and I can't wait to hear what he has to say. One of the things he kind of highlighted is that John Madden once said that when everybody's gone, the busts talk. And so he said it might be more than that, but he said maybe they do more than talk. Maybe they play 7-on-7. Maybe they're games. Maybe it's 1-on-1. But can't wait to hear what goes through his mind in terms of the room where the busts are when everybody's gone.
Yeah, there'll be some audibles there as well.
They will cut off Alan Faneca way before they cut off Peyton Manning, because they know people are watching because of Peyton, not because of anybody else.
Well, I don't think anyone is more thankful for that 8-minute limit than John Lynch, who follows him, right, John Wilkerson?
That's right. In fact, the class of 2021 tomorrow night, Drew Pearson, the Cowboy legend, he'll lead it off. Tom Flores, former Raiders coach, then Peyton, number 3, John Lynch 4, Calvin Johnson 5, Alan Faneca 6, and then Charles Woodson will wrap up the evening.
Can I tell you guys, we have time for one more quick story?
Yeah, absolutely.
1975, Minnesota hosting Dallas in the playoff game. Drew Pearson made his famous catch to win the game from Roger Staubach. I was having a wedding rehearsal for my first wedding, and I would not go into church. I had my car parked outside. I was listening because I was a diehard Cowboy fan. When Drew Pearson made that catch and I heard it on the radio, I ran into church screaming. I told Drew this story. He caught it. The SOB caught it. I can't believe the SOB caught it. And my mother looked over at me and put her hand on her mouth. And the preacher goes, which SOB caught it? And he didn't say SOB. Drew Pearson said, I've heard 10,000 stories from people telling me where they were when I caught that pass, but I can honestly say I've never heard one like that.
Unbelievable. John Wilkerson, tell us for our fans here at Sports Animal Sports Fest what they can expect in terms of the schedule, in terms of your observations, anything you can share from being there in Canton for the Pro Football Hall of Fame.
It's awfully warm, so I'm glad that it's a nighttime induction tonight at 6:30 is when everything starts, because it's a larger class. It's the centennial class that didn't go in last year. But you have Edgerrin James, former Peyton teammate, Steve Atwater, who played at Arkansas. You've got Troy Polamalu, Jimmy Johnson, Bill Cowher among those being inducted. If you go by jerseys on the premises, it's a Polamalu Peyton Manning weekend, because Troy Polamalu, and there's more 43s and 18s than anything. And then tomorrow at noon, there's a Enshrinees Roundtable that's going to be at the Civic Center, where both classes are going to be on hand, and they're going to share their thoughts and memories and things along those lines. And then tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, is when the induction ceremony gets underway, including Peyton. And then Monday night, the week wraps up with the Concert for Legends that'll feature Brad Paisley and Leonard Skinnard. But that's what's yet to come. And it's a great collection of folks that are going in, great crowd on hand, and it's going to be a whole lot of fun.
Well, you'll definitely want to listen to Sports Talk next week, or the next time. John, you're taking some time off, so the next time you're on, maybe Jimmy and I will have you on as a guest on Monday, and get your experiences, because I know you're soaking it in. You appreciate and know how amazing Peyton Manning has been, and that you will have great respect for what's going on, and I know you will soak it all in. So look forward to hearing that from you as well. Have fun, John.
Sure do appreciate it, Vince. Thank you very much.
All right.
Take
John
care,
McClain,
John.
thank you so much, John McClain. Appreciate you. Always great to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Vince. You guys have a great weekend.
All right.
You too, John. Thank you.
So John Wilkerson, John McClain, some talk about Peyton Manning going into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I'm Vince Ferrara. Enjoy the rest of the Sports Animal Sports Fest here in Knoxville at the Expo Center.